So good evening and welcome back to my channel. My name is Swamp Rose, or you can call me Kiki, and I have a special guest with me tonight. Welcome, AR.
Hey, hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well. Look at you. You look beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm sure you look good tonight too, but you're not showing your face, so.
No, not tonight, but you sure your husband's going to allow you to do a full live looking like that? I mean, he's going to come get you off of here pretty quick.
You're so sweet. Yeah, he's a good husband. We were having this conversation before we left the other live, how nice it is that our significant others and spouses support us while we do this and do what we love, because honestly, they're good sports about it.
They are. They have to be understanding. This takes a lot of work. I'm not sure people understand how much we put into this, from the research and the time messaging and answering questions, all of it. I mean, it takes time. So it's good that we have the ones that we do, because most wouldn't let us do this. That's for sure. They would tell me to go get a real job.
We're blessed, and they can see our vision too. So that's what's also special about it too. So
It is. It very much is. So it's good to be here with you. I know we've talked about doing some work together, and I'm a big fan of yours, big supporter. So I'm definitely ready to hear what you have to say.
yeah. Well, for those who don't know, AR and I just got done with a live. We were reviewing the hearing that just happened, and so much has gone on tonight in updates in the Brian Kohlberger case. I was thinking we could talk about that a little bit. I was also thinking that maybe, AR, you could tell us a little bit about your experience the other night for those that weren't with us in Robert's live stream, and you could tell us a little bit what you did the other night. You met with a new creator and a new group of creators on YouTube, and yeah, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about that too.
Are you talking about my little venture over with Daniel?
Yes.
Yeah, that was definitely fun. Let me tell you. You know, the one thing, and I think you and I are both very open minded, and we put ourselves into positions where we can hear what others have to say, because that's how we gather more knowledge and we learn things, and that's how we better discuss even our feelings and our thoughts, is to not be so close minded that we're not willing to see what others are presenting to us. So it was really interesting. I got to go over to the Drunk Turkey show, and I know you're about ready to make your way over there on Friday as well. I actually had a really good time. I had a lot of people reach out to me with concerns prior to me going over. Um, Many know that I'm most of the time softer spoken, and I'm not one that gets into a lot of back and forth, conversations that become drama or negative. So I feel people might have felt as though I was going to get run over or dominated within the conversation. I thought it went really well. I thought it went well. I thought Daniel was very respectful. I thought it was a good conversation. Each of us had our opinions and our thoughts, and they were heard. And I would definitely do it again. So I'm definitely excited to see you venture over as well, because I know you have good thoughts and you have a great mind, and I'm excited to see how that works out too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the conversation goes, because I know the Drunk Turkey show also covers other things that I'm interested in, and just kind of like pop culture things. And I just can't wait to be over there and be in the atmosphere. I was thinking of a couple things as you were talking, and one of the things that came to my mind when you were saying, people thought maybe you might get railroaded as you went over there. I just thought it was nice to see a conversation like this where things don't deteriorate, and it's like people don't let their emotions get the better of them. And it was really good for the viewers. And I mean, that live stream was just so active, and there's so many good questions. So that was my other thing. And then I thought, like, you two come from really good perspectives to share your experiences with each other, because on the one hand, I was thinking, you talk about how people make prejudgments of you right in the live chat. The quote from you was like, you think possibly you might be sticking up for the convict, or just because you were an ex-con, you might stick up for them. And that's like that prejudgment or label they give you. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? Daniel probably suffers from some of that too. Like, people probably automatically assume he too has no objective way to go about the case because he's ex-law enforcement. He's got to be scared. He's got to be, So I was thinking it's a great meeting of the minds, because you guys have that in common. that people might prejudge you in the chat or something like that. So anyway, that just
I
came to my mind.
agree with you. I think that's what's kind of unique about that situation. That's something that I would like to develop more is the ability to see creators from different backgrounds, maybe even conflicting backgrounds, not so much like they hate each other, but they come from two different sides of the world, and they come together to actually discuss things using their experiences and their training and their knowledge that they've gathered. But I mean, it's always gonna, and you're exactly right. You know, my side is, hey, AR is an ex-convict, so he's going to be rooting for anybody going through the justice system to get off, to beat the process, to beat, the allegations against them. Where Daniel, coming from law enforcement, and anybody that's been on the law enforcement side of things that are content creators, going to be depicted as somebody that only roots for law enforcement and everything's by the book and nothing could possibly go wrong. Well, I think last night actually showcased a little bit of a different side of that. I think him and I were very capable of holding a conversation, and both of us were willing to admit when the other said something that made sense. And, oh, I actually agree with that. Even if we have different opinions or different visions, we could still agree on certain things. And that goes a long way. That goes a long way. It doesn't mean I'm going to find, everything he says as exactly true or real or correct. But we didn't blow up and we didn't hang up on each other after, 10 minutes. So we did well.
You guys did really well, and I think that it's kind of speaks to, we often see people just kind of avoid talking about politics or religion or all these other subjects, and like people should be able to express their opinions without us writing off people because they have a different opinion. There's a level of tolerance that we don't seem to have when we talk about things that make us passionate or emotional. And I think that it's nice to be an example. It was nice to see your example for the community on how to actually have a conversation without letting it deteriorate. So it was so good. I really liked it. So.
Well, and I'm a big fan of many content creators out there, and as you know, there are so many that do this that are very engaging, and they are very good at what they do. They're well spoken, they're well versed in what they have to say, very educated, and sometimes I just take a step back, and I'm a little bit unique. I come from a totally different side of things than many out here. I didn't get the educational values as many going through the steps of the schooling. A lot of people know my background story, so I had to learn and develop the capability to hold conversations like you and I are having almost in private, because I didn't always have somebody capable of holding a good conversation. It was either fight or be quiet. So I've been very blessed and very privileged to be around individuals that are willing to hear my voice or allow me to use my voice. And, I'm thankful for many through my steps of starting on YouTube. And it's been a blessing. It really has. And Daniel blessed me again last night. I had reached out to him and he immediately accepted and didn't waver on the opportunity. We made it happen. And now here I am speaking with you, and it's a whole nother experience, which is a blessing as well. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. I think the problem is that I'm holding my tongue because there's just a million things I want to ask you about what we're going to be talking about soon. I do want to say, though, putting that aside, because I am going to be interviewing you soon, I have listened to some of your older videos, and I've gone back to like what your kind of mission is on YouTube, or what your mission is kind of in life, what your philosophy on your channel is. And you started talking, I thought this is just an interesting subject, not to trail off, but you start talking about the intervention of people and finding people before you say that there are certain people who are taught behaviors, and then there's another group of people who are triggered into behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was really interesting. And you say that if we could somehow find these people before they fall through the cracks, before they are triggered, or when they are triggered, getting them back, that's how we could really make some difference in our communities. And I just thought, can you speak on that on the fly a little bit about your philosophy and mission there that I heard on your channel?
Yeah, I actually absolutely can. And I'm trying to put together a whole uh, kind of a project that I want to approach the community with to try to step up to the plate and help with that. Just because I have some experience, obviously, through my own past, my own upbringing, my own development in life, that I understand the different sides of things of those who have actually been groomed to be something, and those that are withholding things within themselves so privately and so tightly to the chest that something just triggers that on the fly, to where a horrendous or a horrific crime can take place and many can get hurt, when it should have never happened. And I believe it all comes down to actually acknowledging issues within the system of development of our children and our teenagers, catching things a little bit earlier than many of us do. And I think that our society right now is kind of taking a bad turn, that we're not paying enough attention to the teachers and the effect that they have. We're not giving them the resources and the help that they need to help better develop our children on a path, because a lot of us have children that go through the public schooling arena, and that's where a lot of these, I guess, trigger points develop, based upon the associations that the kids hang out with. Who do they interact with? What type of things are they doing together? Like, when I was young, we liked to go set things on fire. Our big thing was, let's steal the matches out of our parents' drawer that they used to light candles, and we're going to go see how much stuff we can go burn down. Well, before you knew it, we burned down a school, and there were like 8 people in the school when it happened. And you know, it was something we enjoyed doing, and people should have noticed we had that problem and interjected themselves into that. They didn't do it. Well, later in life, a trigger for me personally was that very simple thing of fire, because I had been through such a situation as a younger person, to where I learned that was bad and wrong. Anybody that lit even a cigarette around me, it became a trigger point for me, where it was very hard to contain my temper, which led to violent situations. So, to kind of break it a little simple for you, I think that we have to pay attention to what are we seeing within those around us that are creating these almost things that people are saying in regards to Brian Koberger. Why did he act in a manner that certain people think that he did? Why was, Kapaka caught on camera at the hotel on the body cam footage acting the way he was? These are triggerable points. And why are we not catching them sooner to maybe stop things before they begin happening? And that's kind of my motive, is I want to get out more and mingle and talk with people, to teach them even how to catch their own triggering methods, and what sets them up to be in a position that could trigger them and put them in a bad spot. So I think that communication goes a long way, education, and coming from somebody that's been through it and kind of understands it, can use examples and personal experiences, will help people better understand that. So
Absolutely. And I mean, you came from your parents, they were very good parents, and they did so much for you, and they sound like such wonderful people. But you found yourself in a situation when you were a little kid, I think, where you had a lot of free time and you had to take care of yourself sometimes when there was a divorce in the family. And I feel
yeah,
that's a huge thing for so many kids, at least 50% of the kids, because when you break up that nucleus, sometimes the kid can have a lot of extra time on their hands. I don't know. I just made that observation. You didn't say that; those are my words. But I was just wondering if that played any role, or am I off the mark on that? Speaking off the top
well,
stuff.
let me give you a little bit of my young years. history. I mean, I'll keep it short, but it will give you a better kind of frame of what I came from, what I got into, and what it led to. So, at birth, I was born to a very young mother. She was 15. She was a heavy drug addict. She was running away from home all the time, so she didn't even know who my father was. Which kind of gives you an idea of how bad that situation was. She couldn't even pinpoint who the guy was that would be my father. So, malnutritioned immediately and taken away by the state and put into foster care for the first 8 years of my life. Was adopted by an amazing family that immediately upon adoption, my adoptive father decided he wanted a divorce from my mother because he didn't want a son. He only wanted daughters, and my mom wanted a son. So then it was just my mother and I. And she remarried an excellent man, but I had lost at that point a lot of trust values, and also being, just so, I guess, not experienced and raised with the nurturing love of a mother through the majority of my life, just being fed by the system. I just ventured out on my own and I started making connections with the wrong people. And once that happened, I just continued down a path that led into criminal activity. And, it ended up with me spending a lot of years in the penitentiary. And I can't blame my family, like my mom and my dad. My adopted mother and my adopted, I guess, stepfather were amazing and still are to this day amazing people with great values, great morals, hard work ethics, um, never been in trouble in their life, wouldn't tell a lie, good religious individuals, and I never fit in, which is sad. I love them to death. I really do. I love them to death. And maybe today there would be more of an opportunity to merge into that and really fix that. But you know, we haven't spoke in I think 6 years now, 5 or 6 years. So I don't know if that will ever come about because they're getting older, and we'll see. We'll see.
Well, I'll say a prayer for you. I'll say a prayer for you, and just put it out there because just put it out there. If that's on your heart, AR, I'm sure you can make it happen.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be the right timing and the right moment. And that's kind of why my motive of really trying to come out when I first came out with this, I didn't know what my voice was going to be or how it was going to be heard or what we were going to really talk. Maybe it was just going to strictly stay directly to true crime, and I would never introduce anything about myself. And by the way,
I'm putting a banner
God, no, drunk turkey's in the show. I wanted to say hi to him. Daniel, great to see you. And sorry, but that's the thing. Like, I want to be there and be a voice of reason for those that maybe feel as though they're alone, like I did for a long time. Even though I had a great family, I felt alone. I was never an incel or anything of that. Like, I didn't have a problem getting a date or having a girlfriend, but I was very distant. I was weird. I was, to myself. And when people put those projections, like I see this, and that's how he ended up in the penitentiary. It's very simple to see my path and how I ended up to the penitentiary and the crimes I committed. It's very simple to lay out the whole framework, and I'm sure many did. And I just hope maybe I could be a voice of a reason to help others avoid that and maybe catch it before it happens and give them the feel that there are people that care, that will listen, and will actually extend a hand out to help them avoid the disastrous points of life that they could get into.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, like there, I think that I don't often say the system failed somebody because I don't know what that refers to. Which system failed you, or where did it fail you, or who failed you, or what person. But in this case, I think one of the things that I took away from your story is before you got into your foster home, it's not that one of the things that was impressed on me is that you were a child who didn't have your needs met. And I think that that's something that we can improve in our society. That is something where our community does fail children, because we are the most, we are the greatest country to ever exist. And if we can't, it doesn't have to be our local governments. If our churches, our people, our neighbors can't make sure that the children are fed around us, this is the one place in the world where we can accomplish that. So that really does get to me, is that's something we can do to stop people who might be triggered later on in life, is make sure we're meeting the needs of young children. Anyway, I definitely took away that from your story. I don't know if you even touched on,
No, and I agree with you. And that's kind of like, if I were to reflect on what we hear about Brian Koberger, if someone said, "Hey, AR, you have this mission, you want to try to step in and help people," how?
Oh, I lost AR. Well, he'll be back. Anyway, I'm so grateful that you guys are here tonight. I just wanted to say a couple of shout outs. Christy, CB, Tarat, Rolo. Okay, we're putting that to you. And Down the Rabbit Hole says AR is a true gentleman who has learned from his hard knocks in life. His wife Jen is a great supporter. There she.
Sorry about that.
As I don't know if you remember what we were talking about, but I was just asking, I was mentioning to them that one of the things before you got into foster care is a lot of your needs weren't met as a young child. And that's a little bit different than, making sure that we look at the triggers and the triggers and the different things that can cause kids to go down the wrong path. This is one place in our society where we can make sure the system does work, and we can make sure every kid in this country is fed and nourished at a young age. There is no reason in this country why we can't do that, other than just lack of knowledge of the kid being in need. And just any thoughts you have on that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I kind of wanted to utilize, like, my opinion of where we could have just, reflecting on Brian Koberger, where no matter whether people feel he's guilty or not guilty within this case, we can go back to early stages of his life where signs of problems were showing. He wrote it his very self, and Daniel did a great job. He brought that up and he mentioned it, of where he specified in his own words, his own way, he was having problem with empathy and emotions. He didn't feel emotions towards anybody, which, I went through a very long spell in my life where it was the very same. My wife would tell you that I had no problem not having people involved in my life, and I had no problem distancing myself from everybody, walking away from my own family and just saying enough is enough. And I think Brian Koberger had put that out very early, and that's where someone should have stepped in and said, "Okay, look, we got to figure out what's going on emotionally here with you right now, to where you feel disconnected. Do you feel as though nobody loves you? Do you feel as though you're not getting attention? Do you feel you're ignored?" And that's where someone could have stepped in and maybe defuse some of those feelings within him. And, I can't speak upon whether those were the feelings that later in life led to anything happening, because, I mean, he did enroll into a PhD program and was brought in and doing well. So, I mean, I wonder, though, if somebody clearly states they're having emotional chaos to the point they have no empathy towards others,
Right.
I think that's a time to step in and show them some empathy and get them to feel loved.
You're saying so many things. So first off, what do you do? I mean, one of the first accounts, if we just talk about BK when he was, when he was younger than high school, he had trouble socializing. And one of the issues is he'd go up to girls and just say, "Do you want to hang out?" And what it sounds like to me is just like you were saying, like, where was the intervention? Like, this kid is having socially awkward problems. He's clearly reciting lines, or it sounds like he's reciting lines people gave him. Like, where's the adult to step in and just teach a young man how to behave and how to help him with socialization? And it's really hard to say because we know he went later on. You mentioned that he started talking about the visual snow and the numbness and disconnect, and that's a trauma response. I did a training on EDMR therapy, and basically one of the things your brain does is when you can't handle processing a situation, sometimes it's not even that traumatic, but your brain just can't process the situation. What it will do as a mechanism to prevent you from stressing out is it'll numb that memory. It'll numb that thought. And years can go by and things can layer up over that thought. And you might never know why you're disconnect. So when you hear someone say, when I hear those sad things, like he hugged his father and he felt nothing, or he knows he should love his family, it sounds so much like trauma response. Oh, of course, I don't know. It could be he could be a born psychopath, but it doesn't sound like he was. He sounded like a lot of people thought he was, a fairly nice person, but we do know psychopaths who appear very nice too. So I don't know.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I've learned that too. I mean, within everybody is a characteristic and a personality deemed by who they are. And you can either conceal that, or else it's a beautiful show of socialism and you're just that bright, shining light that everybody sees in the community. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of individuals that within themselves are a little darker. And I was one of those that, I played all the sports. I was very active in sports. I was a great athlete. I always had a girlfriend. Uh, but I was also one that didn't want to leave the house very much. I stayed in my room 90% of the time. I skipped school more often than I went to school. Even though I got good grades, I skipped going to school. And, people always said, "Oh, look at that bright young kid. He's so nice." But legitimately, I was building up a lot of hatred. I was becoming a criminal, and nobody caught it. Nobody caught on to that. And I think with Brian Koberger, if it turns out that Brian Koberger has something to do with this case, I think we're going to hear the rumblings of, how did nobody catch this? Well, I mean, how many times do we have to legitimately hear that about people before someone's willing to step out of their comfort zone and go say, well, you know what? I've got some experience of being a criminal. I've had those dark moments. Maybe I should go interject and see if I can help some of these people, and just explain to them how I got myself out of that, or how I was able to, reflect more positivity into my own self where other people gained that positivity. I mean, and I want to do more of that. So when I kind of tell you that some of my future wants and missions is to step out into the community, shake hands, and not make friends with the people that go to church every week or those, but those that are really in a dark spot, and say, okay, look, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a psychologist, I can't fix your problems, but I'll be your friend, and anytime you need to talk, we can hang out, and I'll help walk you through this dark time, and maybe that gives them more confidence than just being ignored. So,
Oh God, yeah. I am a Christian, so it sounds, you're being there for your neighbor. And, in the Bible, they tell us, why would you hang out with, they were talking to Jesus, like, oh, why do you hang out with all the thieves and all the tax collectors and all the murderers? And he's like, well, if you were sick, you'd go, the doctor goes and sees the sick people. He doesn't go see that was his comeback, is like, well, you go to see the sick, you go to the people that are in need. And I like that you're not forgetting about people, and you do a lot. That's meant to segue into my next question for you, which is, you do a lot of work with people who are still in the system too, people who you think that you can make a difference for. I have been personally touched by your work supporting Cara Kod. And I just think that, you're a really good person for reaching out to her. And I guess it's been a while since I've asked you, can you give me any updates on Cara and her status, and if she might be looking at release or has a date for release planned yet?
I actually can.
Okay.
I do know more information, and I've shied away from discussing a lot of care. I mean, I took a little flack about a video I did a while back, but it was a necessary video in my mind to portray certain things, and I wasn't directly pointing at anybody and saying this is absolute truth, but it was just a projection of what could be. But um, so Kara now is in the penitentiary. She has made it to an actual yard in the penitentiary, which is good. They held her back originally, and a lot of people, and I even had questions as to why they held her back, because when I had been speaking not only to her but also to the system itself, I didn't have the full gamut of information of they would be holding her back and keeping her from going to a specific yard. So she now has been moved to a specific yard. She has what's called an end date that is in 2030, which would be the maximum amount of time that she can serve in the penitentiary. She has a parole hearing eligibility date in 2000 and I believe it's 28, that she could go before the parole board to see if she's deemed for the eligibility to get out early. Now, the one thing I'm very proud of Kara, and this has nothing to do with me. I did, even though I was fighting for her, and many others were, and we were contacting people to try to help her, different organizations, different actual legal resources and things to step in and to be able to help Kara. I know for a fact it wasn't based upon anything I did, but Kara was accepted into a program within the penitentiary, and she had to accept it herself, and I'm glad she did, to get the counseling and get the help she needs, not only for the mental and emotional chaos that she's enduring for the loss of her child, but even more so her family. She does have other children as well, and her freedom, but the drug addiction. She is now battling that. She's tackling that head on. She is in a very strict program within the penitentiary to help guide her through getting over that. And because she made that decision and is working in that, she got enrolled into a program in the penitentiary that could literally get her released in half the amount of time of even her parole time. So if she works it correctly and she stays on board and stays true to herself, which I hope she does, she could literally be out in less than about a year.
That's amazing. So that I was literally just going to ask you if she was able to get any time served or because I don't know, I know it works differently, and we've had this conversation before where sometimes depending on the sentence you could serve like a year and it would count as a year and a half or 2 years. So that's amazing news. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, that's the early parole that I was talking about. So most people, when you get entered into the penitentiary, you have your full sentence amount of time. Then you get a parole hearing date that would be what's called your good time. That's what you're referencing. You can get some good time taken off of your sentence if you achieve the goals to keep that good time. She earned an additional privilege that could cut that time down even more just by staying on course and really holding herself accountable to the goal that she personally had to accept and want and agree to. So it's gonna be a tough road, but I hope she can do it, and that will help her not only overcome the issues that she was enduring with her habits, but it should give her some self-confidence coming back out here into society as well, and work her way through the parole and get back to living life, and maybe even getting her time back with her family, which I think would be very important.
Yeah. So with the family, mentioning the family, does she have a good support system in place?
I want to say that it's a tough situation because of everything going on. I think she has a good support system as an overall, especially from the people that have engaged with her out here within the community. I think she has a lot of support within that. As for direct family members, I believe the program that she's working is going to create a little bit of distance in that for the short term, and we'll see where that picks up down the road. So it can't get like it's not going to get worse. Her support system's only going to get better as long as she stays on the course of what she's deemed herself to want to be on. So
Well, that is just good to hear. It's good to hear. It's such a positive update from the last time I talked to you, because I know that the judge was being pretty strict with her last time I spoke with you, and whatever method he was using, it looks like if she's in good health and working towards her highest self, then whatever's happening, I just hope it's all for the best. And yeah, I don't know if you want
from
to
what
answer.
I
Oh, I'm sorry.
from what I understand, because um, I've kind of stepped back for a moment with her. I mean, she knows I'm still here, but she engages more with Jen now than me. I think that bond is a little bit better. Um, I think it's a little less chaotic, and Jen is such a sweetheart and just so down to earth and capable of being loving no matter what. So, and Jen stood by me through the penitentiary time that I served, and Jen knows what it's like to be that support system where I'm more familiar with the penitentiary side of things, less familiar what it's like to be out here in the support system. So Jen has taken more of the direct contact there. So and I think that's a great thing. And Jen has had good things to say in regards to what it seems like her mental um, status is kind of at right now, and the way she's sounding more confident in certain things. I mean, nobody wants to be in the penitentiary. Nobody likes their freedom being taken away, but it does sound as though she has some good positivity in her own mind as well, and I think that's pretty important. So
That's great. And I mean, I'm not trying to, make a whole segment about care. It's just interesting how we segued into that. And just the one last thing I want to make sure I'm, leaving with the viewers is one thing we had talked about last time we discussed Kara was if somebody, wanted to send a letter of support to Kara, you were encouraging that. Somebody was asking in the chat, they said they sent her a letter. Is that still something that we should be encouraged to do, or is this not the time and place to do that right now? Or
I
anyone?
abs- uh, I I absolutely do. I believe that any support she gets is only a bigger confidence boost for her. And I think that as we work our way through, and I think something that was very important was her making the decision, first of all, that she wanted to get the help and then push herself forward to do that. So I think it's key now that she's made that decision that we all are proud of that decision, and we show that pride in her making that decision. So absolutely, I'll post, and Rose, I'll send you directly email how to write to her, and I'll give you the entire list of if somebody does want to buy her a book or different ways of supporting her. I'll furnish you all that information so you can share that as well.
Oh,
um, be,
boo.
just be very careful sending any type of financial in large sums. If you send $10 here or there, I think she's in a great place now. She can utilize, be able to get writing materials, the products that will help her feel better about herself, and get a few food items here or there. So just don't send large amounts of money. It's not necessary, and it wouldn't be utilized well. So a few dollars here or there will help out.
And just in case people aren't familiar why we're saying talking about sending money or something, a lot of people might know if they don't have a friend or relative who's been in the system that they have what's called commissary. And if they don't have somebody support them a little bit from the outside world, they don't have little extra things to make life easier. I mean, we're talking things as simple as like toilet paper and a cup to drink water out of. So in some places, so I don't know how it is
And
there, but I just wanted to bring that up to people who might not
yeah,
understand.
it's how you purchase your shampoos, your soaps, your toothpaste. I mean, I know everybody says that you get, some of the stuff through the state. And they really don't. They really do not. You get a bar of soap, and it's the worst stuff that you would ever use. The toothpaste is horrible. So if you legitimately want to take care of yourself, hygiene wise, a few dollars really helps because you can get your deodorant, you can get real soap, you can get real shampoo. And it's not a bad thing every once in a while to have a honey bun or a cup of coffee either. That helps keep the frame of mind in the right place. So,
Yeah, it's really nice. Just
but
looking
I'm
at
sure Jen's helping with that too.
so again, AR is going to give me the contact information, everything you're going to need. So if somebody does want to reach out to Cara, you got another contact point here. I'll provide you with the details to properly do it and do something nice. I like that idea, and I know a lot of my subscribers do too. So looking to see who we have. Oh, we have so many people here. Jeff, thank you for coming for round 2.
Hey, it's great to see you, Jeff. I'm a big fan of Jeff's too. I've always him and I have had some great conversations behind the scenes privately, to where he's really helped keep me mentally straight as well. I know we haven't had a good chance to talk here in a while, but adore Jeff. He's a great person. Rolo, he's in. Got a lot of respect for Rolo. Haven't been able to speak to him in quite a while either, but good people. You got great people within your chat here. 12 gauge, amazing guy.
We have an awesome chat. Rolo, I'm glad you showed up. We were wondering where you were. And I want to just reflect your sentiments on Jeff too, because I don't know, we've got people watching. If you don't know who Jeff is, Jeff H provides us with, he's a professional photographer. So he has great photography grade B-rolls and videos on his channel that we can all use in our videos, and he offers up to us. So just want to make sure everyone knows a lot of that footage you see of Linda Lane comes from Jeff. So, and Elantra footage too.
And to just add real quickly to that, Swamp Rose, is even outside of the whole spectrum of how good Jeff is with that, he is a good individual that if you need to say something or get something off your chest, he will always listen. And let me tell you, he's got good words of wisdom that have helped guide me through a couple of thoughts. And I'm very appreciative. So, Jeff, very appreciative. And Rolo, like I said, it's great. Hopefully, you and I can get some talk time in at some point as well. I know you've been doing some work online, and love to stop by and see what's going on. So,
oh, you know what? While I'm thinking of it, you guys, I'm gonna drop an invite to my Discord server. Not Rolo made me think of it, and then if anyone wants to join, it's gonna erase after this. If I can find the invite here. And you're all welcome to join my server if you want to socialize with us. Where do I find that? Invite people. There we go. Copy. And that's for because I've been meaning to invite my chat. So there you go. Please join us in the Swamp Rose server.
I have a Discord too, but I don't have a server, and I don't know what the hell you people are doing to have servers and chats and phone calls, and I don't even know, but anybody can message me there too.
Yeah, and if you don't know about Discord, I mean, the bar is low. AR and I weren't that great. Unfortunately, when we were first learning, there were a few pocket dials in Discord at like very early hours.
It wasn't my fault.
Wasn't me neither. But yeah, it's really fun. And it's a great, what's another cool thing about Discord is a lot of times people like to send documents or photographs or things that they've gathered. And Discord is a safe place for us to share documents. It's kind of like Twitter. So you can post whatever you want. You can do pictures, memes, videos, links, whatever, and just text message. So that's really nice. It's a nice place to share documents too. Because a lot of times, it's hard to share documents via email.
It is. I agree.
Yeah, Rolo, I don't know if this is, we literally were going to devote an entire live stream to this the other day. So I have a link to it. It's called Wrath of the Math. And I made a video that includes quite a bit about what you're talking about. So go check it out in my Discord server. It's only available to those on Discord. And I spill the tea. Don't you worry. And I don't know if you saw the comment from Jeff.
I did. I'm very appreciative, and Jeff, we'll get together as well. And I think I still have your phone number and email, probably.
All right. So what else are we going to talk about tonight, AR? I could keep talking about you. I got all those questions, but I also don't know if we want to go too deep into it because, like I said, we've got that project and the questions.
Yeah. No. Well,
really
you threw out good tidbits, and I think we'll keep the project together for us to work through behind the scenes, and we gave him a little nugget of what we'll be pulling out, but a lot happened today within the courtroom, and I think if we kind of merge, I want to hear some people in here because we got more people in this chat. I just kind of want the discussion that we were having, and my mind started to really kind of rotate around it, was the phone call, or not the phone call, but the video of I told Adam everything, and then what do people think Kaylee was legitimately doing on her phone after that? And would that be a part of that phone dump of the 17 phones that they're looking for info on? I mean, that's pretty. My mind started to kind of think about that after we talked about that. So,
yeah, and I mean, just to even pose it a different way to the chat, where we went with this conversation is we tried to name all the 17 names that we know of in the case or mentioned around the case that we think it could have been. And I mean, this is when AR says phone dump, he's talking about the massive forensic download of the phone, not just checking one little thing. It's like everything. So who are those 17 people that were within that circle? I mean, they wouldn't just ask anyone. So, I mean, we'd love to know your thoughts too. Any thoughts?
Yeah,
on
I mean,
sorry.
That's what I want, and I know Rolo, who's got a lot of history too, would know when they come at these phone dumps, they're legitimately coming to you saying, "Hey, we're going to take the entirety of your phone, everything on it. So anything you have on your OneDrive, anything you've got saved in your pictures, anything, because they could go get the other data and just pull it through your carrier. They're going to know your phone call history. They're going to know that data. But when they're doing a phone dump, that means they are literally looking for something very deep within your phone. I mean, it's not just your basic stuff. They're looking for something, and it's going to be something important. So I don't know. 17 phones that they took the entirety of, and we know the basics. We know the people in the home. We know the roommates. We would know the boyfriends. I mean, those are obvious. But this is also to the level, if the person said, "I'm not going to give you my phone," they would have to go get the warrant for the remnants of these phone dumps. And I'm also interested to see, did they have to go get some warrants? Were warrants issued for that? Because there are other warrants issued for phone records outside of just, the victims and Brian Coburgers. There are other phones that warrants were issued for. So who said no?
Okay, so there were other phones warranted. I mean, I'm just trying to think back of when I'm just trying to think back of all of the search affidavits and the search warrants I've searched through. And I mean, like we could add up how many searches for each person. If I had to think off the top of my head, the person who had the most was, I want to say, well, Kaylee was the one with the number one amount of search warrants under her name. And then Maddie was a close second. And then Ethan and Xana were like maybe within 10. But I don't recall an unknown or a number that wasn't attached to somebody randomly in those search warrants. I wonder if it would be in those search warrants or if it would be somewhere else. And then I'm just trying to think. And then BK had 2 phones. So there's 2 phones there. I forgot to tell you that. I remember reading that in the search. We brought that up before, that they had 2 phone numbers that they were looking for. The one that ends in 58 is the one they were casing for that night. But
Now, and see, that's something I would like to pick your brain on. Is this he had a phone and he went and got a new phone to replace the old phone, meaning he got a new phone number, like to establish residency within the state of Washington State, possibly to get in-state tuition at Washington State University, you have to declare yourself a resident, which would mean go get your car registered within Washington State. Instead of renewing in Pennsylvania, he got new registration for his vehicle at the Washington, office. And then did he get a new Washington phone number? Or is this going to come back that now he has 2 phones, both being separate phone numbers? Like I go get a new phone all the time, but I get a new phone number, or I just add the phone to my current plan and keep the same number and get rid of the old phone.
I mean, I don't know. I have no answer for you. All I'm was saying that maybe that's one of the 17 because it's so hard to get to that number. But you're right. And I don't think we were talking about a burner phone because he wouldn't probably have it in his possession. So yeah, it could be something as simple as changing your number to an in-state number so you fit in or acclimate better.
Well, that also, it gives me a question as well, because a lot of people say, why did he take his personal phone with him if he was going to commit this crime? If you got 2 phones, could you be trying to play a little bit of a trick where you leave one phone at home, you got your other phone with you, and then you just don't think, if nobody catches me, they're not even going to know about this other phone. But I mean, you got to really be a dumb person to think that they wouldn't know you had 2 phones. So it'd be interesting to know that, though. Like, do you got 2 separate state phone numbers? You got an in-state phone number and an out-of-state phone number? What do you got going on there?
I don't know, but I'm going to be adding up these phones for the next few days trying to figure this out. It's definitely, since you brought this up, it's driving me nuts. Who are the 17? Yeah. It's interesting.
Isn't it crazy how we got this little stuff spinning through our mind now? Because when we, left the last discussion we were having, I'm like, holy cow, I got to go do a deep dive research now. And then I got to put together all this research into a little idea. And then I got to get on and do some videos. This might take a while.
I think that's the thing I never realized, or I never realized before I started making the true crime videos or any video. It's like you think of a little idea and you think you have it down, but then when you get to presenting it, you realize there's just so much fact checking. It does take a long time to put out a video because you can't just say anything. You have to make sure that, the fact checking takes a long time. The research takes a long time, even for simple things. When you're speaking off your mind, you want to make sure you have your facts straight. It's a lot that goes into it. People don't realize. Not to get off.
That's a lot of things too. I try to share with people that, when I speak, my videos are based on a lot of thought, a lot of opinion based off of those thoughts. Of course, I get the details like everybody else does, but then I just kind of put my thoughts out there because it's very hard to speak directly to the details when I personally don't know everything behind those details. Like, we're talking about 17 phones that have been investigated doing a phone dump. Well, without knowing whose they were, what led to them getting to those phones, I can only speculate. But it's definitely a thought-provoking idea to discuss, and who and why it would lead to that. I mean, the basics are easy. The last, I want to say, 4 people would be a crazy rotation of people's names that you could slide into those spots and speak upon. You know what I mean? Like you could put a lot of people in those last few slots and they would make sense, but they might not at all have any point of being investigated. So who knows?
Yeah. Another topic that we really discussed about the hearing today that I still will be dwelling on for a long time, probably because I've devoted so much of my time to it, but is the lost footage and what exactly they meant by that. I mean, we can take it at its literal meaning. They like literally lost the evidence, or I was saying, because I didn't see that part. I saw the recap afterwards where the judge said, that kind of back to AT, he goes, well, you're not saying they didn't give it over. You're saying that they gave you something, but they just didn't give you everything. And he kept trying to make that clarification. Anyway, what I'm getting at is, are they saying, you were talking about presentations of evidence. And what I was saying is, okay, well, in one example, AT said, well, I got 1,000 hours of footage. I need this one shot. I could hire an expert to do this, but more so, I think you, Judge, should order the prosecution to audit this and give me some timestamps so that I don't have to do that. So I'm wondering, when they say lost footage, are they just saying they don't know the timestamps? And I mean, I don't know if anyone even knows what the answer to these questions are. We just want to know your impressions from the trial. And I want to know AR's impression, because you had obviously a different takeaway than I did a little bit.
Well, also, in the retrospect, I know now a little bit better what you're talking about. It wasn't actually to the video. What you're speaking of is when Ann Taylor was requesting the actual filings to the FBI subpoenas, and they wanted to know the dates, the times that those were filed, along with the reasoning behind the filing and what they were looking for. So they had specific parts of that they were looking for, and the prosecution looked at him and said, we turned all that over to you, meaning we turned over those subpoenas and what we got back from those. This is what the FBI gave us back. And Ann Taylor shook her head and said, no, we're trying to build a timeline based upon when you filed what and what that was for and what you were getting back from it. So literally what they were trying to break down was a timeline leading to the evidence against Brian Koberger. And the prosecution just kept looking to the judge saying, we've turned this stuff over. It will have a timestamp on it. And that's when Ann Taylor looked at him and said, no, that's not what we're requesting. We want the entirety of the file, and you're telling us you don't have that. You're telling us you only have specific parts of that, and we want all of it. And that's when, the little lady that spoke for the prosecution, I never remember her name, is like, well, I just guess we're not going to have that. And the judge intervened right there and says, well, is there a way that you could reach back out and get it? And that's going to become a big, heavily debatable item. I guarantee it. Those that are on one side are going to say, well, it's not even that important. They got the information back. It's been turned over. It's been disclosed. But Ann Taylor wants to build the entirety of how it was filed for, when was it filed for, what was the reasoning to reach out for that, what did you get back and when, and then what did you do with it when you got it back. So she's really going to fight for the chain of custody and get stuff out. And some of that is video, which she deemed she hadn't gotten. She doesn't have even the video of the 1122 King Road. She does not have that video. Can you imagine that? She doesn't have the video.
I don't even know what to say. Yeah, and I don't know if that's the lost video either. Like, it became very unclear at a certain point. And when you were bringing that up, that reminded me of another thing we kind of went over, which was when they were talking to Cy Ray. They're requesting these audits of the interactions between the prosecutor and the FBI. And through the course of questioning, said, well, I obviously haven't got some of these emails now. And she started bringing them up. And what I thought was interesting was Cy Ray brought up the first name of the person in the FBI that the prosecutor was emailing. And my takeaway was it's almost like Cy Ray is acting as if he knows something was said that isn't. That's the impression I got, especially when he drops the first name of the FBI agent that the person was emailing with. I don't know. But then again, he probably would know the name at this point because he's read all the court material or all the material he's presenting. But I thought that was
No, I think it's much more than that, Kiki. I believe he knows him personally, and I was thinking about that too because we had a good discussion about that as well. And maybe Cy Ray does know there's more communications here that transpired, and that's why the defense is able to hone in on that. But you also kind of, and I had to take a step back too, and I'm sure you've thought about it a little bit. Did the FBI reach out to Cy Ray at any point in this case and say, hey, you're spectacular at this type of stuff, and we know your whole background. Could you take a look at this for us? And that's when Cy Ray said, oh boy, we got a problem. And that's where the defense attorneys honed in on it and contacted Cy Ray. Because I'm wondering, I just don't feel like the public defender's office from Moscow, Idaho, well, the county, would know to reach out to Cy Ray unless there was a lead push for them to look that direction to him. And is that maybe because they saw that the FBI reached out to him first and said, hey, we need some help with this?
No, that's a really interesting thought. I mean, yes, when she says that he came out with something, he has exculpatory evidence, and the way that he was describing it today, I mean, from what I've heard from everyone who talks about his character, he's concerned with justice. He's concerned with making sure that he's concerned with justice, and he seems like a moral person. And it seems like that was the fabric of his life's work, with this casting. And that's an interesting take on it because it would make a lot of sense that he was the one who reached out to the prosecution. Because how would they know that if they went and ran this casting that they'd get different results they would have to, how would they know that? You know what I mean? Well, of course, the person who committed the crime would know where they were at what time. But how did they know when they went to side that he would get a different interpretation of the casting than the people who had done it? And I think the answer to that question would be is if he reached out to them. So it really insightful they are. That's a good thought.
And I kind of think about it because Cy Ray is law enforcement background. He has worked very hard and very diligently to solve crime. He's even been on the prosecutor's side testifying in cases where he could benefit the prosecution to help find the justice within these things. So I feel as though he's built, I want to say connections, but it's even more than connections. I think partnerships with some of these people within law enforcement, specifically even within the FBI, who would handle these larger scale investigations like this. And a phone call could have been made by a gentleman that's looking at this stuff for the Idaho case, and they called Cy Ray and said, hey, you're more experienced at this. We think you may have better idea or better knowledge of what we're looking at here. Can you? And that's where Cy Ray's better self came into play and said, wait, there's a problem here. Like, no, I don't side with you, especially with the little bit you're giving me to work with. This is garbage. Like, what is this? And that's where he would have to put his foot down and say, hey, I got to go talk with Ann Taylor. And I got to give him my opinion on this and give him my reports and my knowledge. And now Ann Taylor's got some firing sticks on other people that have been talked to through emails or what, that the prosecution has not shared that info with.
No, I like that insightful thought. I'm just reading down, seeing if there's any any questions here anybody had for AR. And if you do have them, just if you could put a couple asterisks next to them, it makes it easier to find. But I just was reading a couple comments here. Now that the DNA evidence has been tossed, I wonder to myself, when have they ever proven BK's DNA was on the sheath? Actually, did they toss the DNA evidence? Did I miss something?
No,
Oh gosh.
no. The DNA has not been tossed. Now it's gonna be battled, but it's definitely not tossed. I mean, I don't know what happened within the secondary portion of today's hearings. They were going over IgG and they had experts, but that's only to compel evidence. So that wouldn't have been to dismiss or suppress evidence. We definitely have not gotten to that hearing yet. That's for sure.
Okay. And Daniel says, AT has probably gone through cases with cast involved and may have recognized something off. Maybe not exactly which way they contacted the expert. So in a previous comment earlier up here, he says, how would Cy know the evidence to reach out? I'm not reading well tonight. How would Cy know the evidence to have reached out? The defense had to reach out first, and then the second comment.
Well, and Daniel, that is a good statement. However, I do know from past experience, especially with public defenders, that it's not always the defense that reaches out to combat evidence, especially when they haven't received said evidence as of yet. They've only got a draft. They have not received the said evidence. Now, they've probably received documents and different statements, so I can't argue my point over years to the fullest, but I have a feeling that, Cy Ray, could he have been contacted by the defense? Absolutely, because they're going to be sifting through trying to find experts to help their case. But could the very law enforcement that Cy Ray has worked numerous times within helping the FBI with these very types of things reached out to him for expert advice as well? That could be a possibility. I'm not saying yours is wrong and mine is right, because I don't know. But I think if we look at it both ways, I think it could have gone, either way. Either way. But I do understand your point as well.
Wait.
Oh. Sorry, Kiki. I didn't mean to overtalk you or cut you off.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking like a robot tonight anyway. It's probably better if you talk. But Drunk Turkey Show, I was just talking about your live last night, and dyslexia took control of my fingers. It got so intense in the live last night. I was having trouble keeping up just reading. We're not used to that around these parts. Well, maybe AR is. He gets a lot of people in his chats. You did really well the other night. I haven't, since I got back on YouTube, I used to get I don't know, it was usually 180 I used to have in my chat, but I really just break 100 a few times since I've been back. I just don't think I'm in the algorithm. Not to tell you guys my life story, but sorry.
It goes back and forth. I'll be honest with you. It goes back and forth, and I'm sure the other content creators within the chat here all understand. Sometimes we do well within the algorithm. Other times it just seems like YouTube doesn't want us to be in the algorithm, or whatever it might be. I mean, we all fluctuate. We all go up and down. So I've had times where it's like I've got 100 people in there. I've had times where I've had 40, and then I've had times I've had 800, and I can't even understand. It's just like, what am I doing wrong here?
I don't know, but I have to tell you, I think that you had your dog Xander in the live stream the other night, and he gets up on the couch with his big fat head. And oh my gosh, that must have upped your viewership instantly. This dog is adorable, but I'm just going to tell you, if that might be it, the nights that you have his big fat head showing the live stream, I'm sure a lot of people do. That's a cute dog.
Xander's well followed. He's well liked. He even now, they have their own channel even. So, I mean, they're doing okay. Yeah. Pitties Go Stripping. Xander, Bayou, and Aspen have their own Pit Bulls on the Strip show. So
Shut up. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I hope your channel's doing well because I can tell you my dog Rocco literally has more views on YouTube than I do. It's just insane. I have like a little,
We have it.
and if I put that formula up, he gets like, a cool 10,000 views. I'm like, Pup, what are you doing? It's pretty cool that.
No. Jen just started it, and she just does very few little videos here or there. I mean, we've done some lives where we've actually walked the strip with the pit bulls, walking them through the Bellagio, and the different visuals here in Vegas. So it's kind of fun, but very very new, very small. But I'm sure it will grow. You know how dogs, people love seeing them. So Xander is definitely the voice of reason for a convict's thoughts for sure. So.
Is Vegas a dog friendly city?
Very, yeah,
Really? So you can go to like restaurants and different places with your dogs.
yeah, very
That's
much so. It's very good. Ours go out everywhere, so yeah, it's fun.
Hold on. Cy Ray confirmed something I've said too, that Brian's data was the one he concentrated on particularly. He said he's got everyone's data and accessed the tower from 1112 to 1114. I did think that was interesting when they were talking about how the report was built and they brought up other roommates' phones. And I couldn't tell if that was to, what's it called, make the oh, the name is escaping me right now, but remember we were talking about them simulating that drive test or whatever. But I was wondering if they were, remember how they mentioned the roommate cell phones use? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I think so. Yeah, I mean they're definitely gonna have all of that information. But I kind of agree with Rollo that today, I mean it was pretty evident by what Cy Ray had to say that they were after Brian, and they didn't really deter from that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they explain that.
Oh yeah.
Because if you can't explain how, why, when you got on someone, and then why you started trailing them and tailing them, I mean they're talking about surveying him, and well, you better. There's a lot that goes into having to explain that. So
Yeah. We have a question here for you from Down the Rabbit Hole. The alternative suspect statement blew me away. What does AR and Rose think of that revelation? I missed it, AR. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
you know,
Alternative suspect.
I've really been under my breath stating it for a very long time that Brian Koberger is not the only suspect in this case. Um, and I don't want to get real in depth into it, but I think a lot of people know that I've looked at somebody else's, at least a co-defendant, if he was still walking around, and unfortunately he's not. So I believe the entire sealing and the redacting and the hey hush hush in court, nope, we got to take this behind closed doors, is because there are alternative suspects that are being looked at. Uh, and there's also other possible people that would have been defendants, should have been defendants, that aren't. At the end of the day, I mean, I'll kind of just make my bold statement, and I'll leave it at that, and I'll let you share your thoughts because I think it's important to hear yours. Brian Koberger will not be the last arrest in this case. That I'm going to leave it at that for now because I kind of have plans where I want to go with that. But that's just a bold statement I'm going to leave out there on the table. Brian Koberger will not be the last arrest in this case.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna bring up, and so this isn't my own original thought too. It's kind of painted with what AR said in one of the last live streams, but we talk about how did they so quickly get Brian's name, and I think that a lot of us watching this just keep getting this feeling that it's some sort of informant, that is an actual person who said his name, and I'm wondering, could that be the alternative suspect, the one who brought up the name? So I don't know. That's my only thought, and I don't remember where they said that in the hearing because I was doing some housework and getting dinner ready, and I just missed it. But I'm definitely going to go back and I'm going to hear exactly the context they said that, because that's a really interesting statement and it's a good catch. And I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you, down the rabbit hole.
I kind of reflect too, because as you guys know, I've been really hinting at, I feel there's a lot of talking going on, um, which, at the end of the day kind of means snitching that is happening. And you kind of have to focus back on, a lot of people projected Brian Koberger as being this person that was working through the social platforms online and the Reddits and putting out information about things, that others outside the case would not know. And so just tell me, why would Brian Koberger, who would be a suspect, if he was the one that committed the crime, he would know he would be a suspect, because once you commit a crime, you're a suspect. That's just what it is. Why would he make the statement hiding in the Pocono Mountain? Why would you ever direct them to your lone getaway spot all the way across the country? He didn't. A snitch did. And, that's why I keep saying mouths were talking. And that's what allowed authorities to start using social media disguised accounts to put out information, letting the suspect know, hey, we got info. We got info. And then that last statement, he's hiding in the Poconos, in my opinion, is the authorities saying, we know where you're going and we're going to come get you. So.
Okay. I'm gonna reiterate, I'm gonna build on what you're saying then, because I have something and I'll show it to you at another time. I'll try. I don't know if I can actually get the actual article again, but I have screenshots of it and I made a video about it. But early reports, you know how Substack is like a paid site? I go onto another one of these paid vlogging sites where professional writers, essentially like in Substack, a lot of places in Substack, I know journalists go there to get fed by even better journalists who kind of feed the masses. And so it's kind of like that on other vlogging sites too. So I go on and I was reading one of these professional writers doing their work on the Idaho 4 when I first started my vlog. And the article I read has since been pulled. And it was a super fascinating article. And the woman who wrote it doesn't typically do Idaho 4. She does a lot of lifestyle and stuff, but this was a seriously detailed article about how and again, you guys, this is not a verified source. I was not able to find this other places, but she went into extreme detail about how a 4chan autistic solved the case. And basically, when they were asking for people to look at these image boards and those 4chan posts, what they say allegedly happened was that the BK was posting on 4chan and hit one of those Wi-Fis. And I'm not saying that happened, but all I'm getting at is that whether it was him or whether it was they said the perpetrator or was the perpetrator, there were early reports that those 4chan posts were the reason why somebody got tied in, because they were so detailed. And I always go back to Sigma Chi taking all of their stuff off of the internet until from Facebook until 2018. And I always thought it was because of those 4chan posts. They just knew way too much about their nicknames and their personal lives. And it sounded like at times somebody pretending to be upper class. Or it was also weird, I've noticed at times in those 4chan posts where they brought up like weird slang that you normally wouldn't see, but you might assume an upper middle class person might say. I don't know. But I do agree that those 4chan posts are at least the first round of them, I get this feeling they were connected in some way. And I just, and then there was these early reported articles that have since been pulled off the internet, and they don't come from necessarily the seediest sources. They come from seasoned journalists. So it's very interesting. And I'll show you the article so AR can know what I'm talking about, but I won't bore you guys and pull up the video now. But anyway, that's a long
It's just always very interesting. And, when I think a lot of us have to dig way back into our mind to what we were learning very early, because it seemed like information was creeping out a little bit early, then it got shut down, then a little more would creep out. But, a lot of us always had this little urge to dive a little deeper and try to figure things out, like the 4chan posts and the Facebook groups and all this stuff. And it's like, if Brian Koberger's the culprit, then why did all the 4chan stuff come out with heavily detailed information about the fraternity house? How would Brian Koberger have that? Like, Brian Koberger's not going to go in there and write about the frat house because he wouldn't have that information. He wouldn't know whose room looked directly into whose room, and he wouldn't have that. He wouldn't know it. And then again, why would Brian Koberger type that, hey, I'm over here in the mountains in Pennsylvania, come find me, I'm over here? That's why I'm saying there's mouths that fed the prosecution some information. And sometimes I just kind of have to stop myself and say, were these mouths feeding information actually about Brian Koberger, or were these mouths feeding information about Brent Kopacka, who also has ties to the Poconos Mountains and maybe has ties, more direct ties, to people around the frat house, people around that area deemed, within that area, just friends of his. Who knows? Maybe he got out and about more. Who knows? But that's just my question. And that's why it's like our mind spins so much because we're trying to piece these things that don't make sense together. And coming from my angle of life, like, I've been around the crime, I've been around the snitches, I've been around the tattletales, I've been around all that. Know how all that works. So I start to venture that way thinking, where other people start looking at other things. And that's why we're on different sides of, the thought process. But I don't know. I've got a gut feeling there's just something not right. Just not right, and
Well, one of the things I really liked when you first started your channel, and my sister, Gia, of course, my co-producer, my sister-in-law, she turned me onto your channel. And the first video I watched of yours, you were talking, and it was before we knew too much, but you were talking about getaway drivers and what it would take for probably, I would say, a person with a fairly normal structure of their mind to commit something like this, because you talked about the adrenaline, the heart rush, planning, just the things, the measures you would take to keep yourself safe, and not, even if you were a criminal, and not take a chance like that. And so now that we know more about the case, when we knew nothing back then, and we were just trying to get a profile, I mean, I bet there is quite a lot you can instinctually surmise from what you're reading now, when we keep hearing informant, other suspect, alternative suspect. I would love to see you said you're working on something right now that has to do with alternative
I
suspect.
am. Yeah, I'm putting together a little series that I want to work on that kind of takes you through the idea of how informants lead to digging deeper, through the investigations to find certain types of people, and how they actually, in an investigation, in most cases, they don't just look at one perp. And that's why when you look into the paperwork, you'll see vehicle suspect number 1, vehicle suspect number 2, vehicle suspect number 3. It's because they'll start actually giving certain people, oh, that's suspect A, that's A.R. Hayes. Suspect B is, Brian Koberger. Suspect C. So, these little slippages that are coming out. And if you really listen clearly to the motions and the hearings and the things being said, it's dropping little hints of, this is not just your typical everyday informant, because they don't just go hide informants. They don't need to, because nobody knows who the hell it is. This person that has to be confidentially hidden and protected, it's because they're known who it is. They're known. Whether it be Brian Koberger knows who it is, or somebody around this case outside the spectrum of law enforcement knows who it is, because they're saying they have to protect them. I know they use that whole list of things, and they say they got to protect Brian Koberger's image and rights. They got to protect law enforcement and the investigation and blah. They've got to protect all of that, but they got to protect that person, because guess what? Once a person is found and known, problems happen. phone calls are made. Dangerous situations arise from that. Whether it's real information or not real information, you never know. But if they're hiding this stuff, that's why I've always said the mouths are running. Now, they claim, and it looks obvious by the prosecution's way of handling things, they do have something in their pocket they're going to bring out that's going to be a boom. They got somebody. I want to say something, but I would rather use the word somebody. There's a person that's going to be their boom that they're relying everything on. There's no doubt in my mind. They're relying everything on that person. And I've even had the thought in the back of my head, I'm like, I wonder if Branka Paca really is still alive in witness protection or in hiding. It would kind of make sense, especially if he had a little bit of involvement in this. He took the plea right away. He got caught. He said, yeah, I'll give you all the information you need to catch others. Well, now they hide him. That happens all the time. There could be another suspect. There could be an alternative defendant right there. We'll see. We'll see. But it's going to be a boom.
It's going to be a boom. And I just want to pass on to you this, is that you and Lucky, or Unfiltered Lucky, brought up this subject a while back about these early news reports. And we actually found them. We not only found a newsreel, but we found actual text messages from the reporters saying that there was a fifth that was rushed to the hospital that morning, but 4 dead, 1 to the hospital. And it could have been a mistake. We don't necessarily know what those newsreels meant, but could that be the alternative suspect? Just while we're picking our brains, who it could be? Could there have been a person who survived and witnessed? And in that case, I'm pretty sure that person would want to stay in hiding if they could. Anyway, just adding that to the list of alternative.
Yeah, no, and I've made that statement too. You got a house that typically has over 100 people on the weekends partying it up and drinking and passing out on couches, and they all live relatively close. What's so wrong with falling asleep on the couch and walking it off in the morning to go home? I mean, none of them would know, but it was eerily quiet in that house, except for the crime. And that's just not normal, because, I mean, look at all the body cams. You got people in the home when supposedly the people that live in the home weren't even in the home. So, I kind of wonder, why was nobody in that home having a little fun that night? Where was everybody? We don't know where Hunter Johnson was hanging out. We don't know where even Dylan was hanging out. We don't know where Bethany was. We don't know. Why was there no action at the house on big game night, party night? And, it seemed like Kaylee came back for something important, and then there just really wasn't much important going on. That's all weird to me, but, I mean, I could see what's the little girlfriend of Hunter Johnson that's also close friends with Bethany? Who's to say she wasn't downstairs with Bethany hanging out? I mean, cops sure made it seem like everybody in the house was asleep at the time of the crime. And they also made it seem like there were people downstairs in Bethany's room. That was the first take everybody had, is why was everybody in Bethany's room? Not like the victims, but why was Dylan asleep in Bethany's room? Do you remember that? That was a big discussion very early on. And a lot of people got kind of whambazzled when they found out, oh, wait, Dylan actually lives on the 2nd floor. So
I don't know, AR. The more I dove into the PCA, the more I basically came to the conclusion I don't think Dylan ended up sleeping in her room. And the reason for that is they say that she originally was in her room, and that I got that from lawyer, and he says, well, I would say it infers exactly what it infers, that she originally was here. So if she was originally here, that means there was an alternative place she was afterwards. And I was kind of thinking that as you were talking. I also had a couple other thoughts. One of the reasons I thought maybe Dylan could have closed that door and just not reopened it for the night and end up passing out is if she had a guest in there with her. I mean, if she brought her boyfriend home, I can see the situation being a lot clearer where she shut the door in frustration or said there's a rando walking around the house and shut the door back into the safety of her home. I mean, I don't of her room. So I want to throw that out there too. And the other thing that's really getting to me, and it's coming up a lot because I think people, and I think maybe if we look at the exact wording in the PCA, it's not quite as damning, but it does sound like Xana and Ethan left the party at 1:45 or arrived home at 1:45. It doesn't say that exactly, but it says that Bethany witnessed them there from like 9 to 1:45, where we know we have the testimony of them being there at midnight from her father. So I don't know. That keeps tripping me up in my head as we hear from one of the people who isn't under the gag order that Xana was eating pizza at midnight. And then we hear, and allegedly paid for a ride home at 11:30 to Jack. So why is it 1:45 in the PCA? And again, I don't know if it just was kept abroad or I'm just throwing out my.
And to kind of add to that, and I really like the way you're kind of going with that thought, because I've had an extended version of a thought of exactly what you're thinking is once the altercation, which I think most of us believe truly happened with Ethan and somebody at the fraternity house earlier in the night, some type of verbal altercation, maybe a shoving match or even the punches thrown, who knows? An altercation occurred. Ethan and Xana left. They went home. In most cases, when something like that transpires, and I'm thinking of what Jen typically does when I get a little bit flustered, is let's go home, let's relax, we'll get some pizza, watch a little TV. If we want to have a few more drinks, we'll do it on the comfort of our couch. But you're not going to go back to the very spot you just had the altercation.
No, you nailed it.
So when Bethany says, well, they were there till 1:45. Well, now you've got to answer a question for me, because if they left to diffuse themselves, and they got some pizza and they're sitting on their couch and they talked to Xana's father on the phone, which I don't see why the father or Cara, who also seconded that, would lie about that. Like, I don't think that would be incorrect information. I truly believe they would know that happened, and they wouldn't fabricate that happened. So you're telling me between the time of that conversation with Dad, they're going to pick themselves back up, knowing they're going back to a place they've already been into an altercation where the guy you got into, well, supposedly the guy you got into the altercation with, lives there with his buddies. I don't see it.
Right.
And then Ethan and Xana would have made their way back home to a devastating loss of life. Like, that doesn't sound like a timeline that makes sense to me. Me coming home, sitting on my couch, eating pizza, and staying home makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to me. Me and my girl, hey, look at that. I've got the house empty. The house is empty, and I'm here with my girl. Oh, this is good times. I'm not going back out right now. Night's over. Night's over.
Night's over. And also, I mean, you said it from the first, even at your first statement, you're like, why on earth would somebody get into a confrontation, especially with their houses right down the street, and then go back there? Like, especially when the two people who you have trouble with, you have known trouble with, and that you've known awkward situations with, and they live there. You're right. You would come right home. And the only thing I can think of, like you said, well, the parents, you're pretty sure they would know that detail. I've heard, I don't know if there's any truth to this. It's all just like word on the street. I've heard people type in my chat before that they thought that possibly Xana's father was mistaken on the day they were eating pizza, that it might have been the day before or something. Have you ever heard anybody say that, or is that just, you know, rumor mill stuff?
Well, yeah, I think it would have gotten corrected, like
Good point.
by him, or Kara would have corrected that. Kara's not out of the loop. She, she came on to the social platform like we're doing, and she shared her feelings and her thoughts, and she got a lot of feedback. She got a lot of people that were willing to discuss things with her. She's intelligent. She could put, you know, ducks in a row herself, and she also talks with Xana's father. I think those would be questions that they would discuss between each other because they want to know the truth of their loss of their daughter's life. They're going to take the time to discuss it together. I think that would have came up. Like, do you really think it was that night, or could it possibly been a different night? Well, no, I think I could look at my phone and I can see the dates. Like, it kind of adds up to the night she lost her life. I
Well,
see it. I
yeah,
see the call record. You
you know,
know,
you're interjecting sensibility into what I just said. I guess, just throwing it out there. But you know what? That's
no, but
how I feel guilty. I
it's
say
a great question. Could it have been the wrong night? Because we saw the pizza box sitting on the back porch. We don't know when that pizza box is from. We legitimately don't know when that pizza box got placed outside or when it got ate. But I would think someone that makes a statement, I talked to my daughter and they were at home and it was midnight. We were talking. How do you get the night confused that your daughter was killed? Like
I agree with
how
you.
he would have had to have given that information the very next day, the very next morning, just right after that 911 call was placed. You give it a couple hours, he was being notified one of his daughters was no longer walking around on Earth. I think he would have been able to comprehend it. I just talked to my daughter 8 hours ago. Like I
Just
could look at my phone, I could look at it.
no,
I, as a dad, I would take a screenshot of that phone call because I would forever want to remember my last conversation with my daughter. I would never let that go, ever. So I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, I think you answered the question. I mean, that's a clear and concise thought. There's very few things in this world that would throw us off especially when you say it like that. That's the last conversation he ever had with his daughter. He wouldn't make that mistake, and he could look right on his
Well,
phone, verify it as well.
yeah, I'm
Not
just thinking, I don't have a child, but I see people that do, and I see even the victims' families, and we've seen all of them on camera speak, and we can see the emotion, and I think he's sitting with his other daughter and his sister showed that very emotion, and I just think before he would allow a statement to be made, like detailing the last moments of his daughter's life and the last conversation he ever had, I don't think he would make that error. And I think it's really unfair that people would speculate to the point that he would, because I think that's something that needs to be left between him and his daughter. Um, you know,
Yeah. Oh, I lost AR again. I'm just gonna go through some of the. Rolla says Lana thinks because the pizza part and why should she order DoorDash afterwards, but don't realize DoorDash was to throw off the time. Okay. I thought about DoorDash too, like, and we've had conversation. I mean, I could see myself like ordering DoorDash at 4 in the morning if I was still hungry. I don't find it that weird. I know AR left. AR, if you can hear me, people are calling for you. He'll be back, hopefully. Well, we are hitting the 2-hour mark. Okay, well, I'm not sure if AR is going to be coming back or not. I am hitting the 2-hour mark. If you are watching, AR, thank you so much for doing this impromptu live stream with me tonight. And thank you everyone for being here. I do have a little outro. I'll play some music. Oh, good. AR's here. I was going to say. I was like, are you mad?
Nuts. No, it literally, you know what? It just put me back over into Robert's StreamYard for the live that we were on. And I'm like, oh, wait, this isn't right.
It's not your fault. He left the stream open. I went back on too because I thought you guys were still streaming. And I'm like, but yeah. So,
but how'd I leave yours and go over there? That was really weird.
No, I just
very, very weird.
You clarified, like your thought was very clear by the end. There's just, how dare we shouldn't even speculate on him. And I think the last thing you said is that's between him and his daughter, and then you got cut off and left.
Yeah, well, I think it's unfair. Like, I would never question him for saying this is when I spoke to my daughter, because first of all, I wouldn't be able to prove that it wasn't when he spoke to his daughter or what they spoke about. But there would be so many ways to disprove that. And if it does come out later, like, no, they weren't at home eating pizza, they really were at the party. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. The man made a mistake. It's not something we need to really harp on, I guess. But, you know, I feel for the man. I do. I feel for him.
But you know, that's what I do love about the setup, the forum that we have for covering a case is it's that open dialogue. So if somebody has that question, it's better for someone to ask and have us talk about it. And there's no disrespect in asking a question ever, because that's, you know, we can share our insights on it. And it's worse if you don't ask questions, because then you have a lot of unanswered questions in your head. And that's when, you know, we need faith in our system and the people that we need to have faith in our system. So anyway, it's worth it to ask questions. There's no stupid questions ever.
Yeah, no, questions are great. Discussions are amazing, but turning something into fact that legitimately should just be a question or a discussion is a completely different thing. Like, I'm not going to accuse a man that he made a mistake in his timeline unless he comes out himself and says, hey guys, look, because I would think that he would have caught on to that. He would have recognized it, and he would have just fixed the error. He would have just admitted to it, just cleared it up, moved on. At least that's what I would think he did. So
no, I do like it. I'm glad you thought it out. That way I have a good answer, because it's come up several times in my chat, and it's just and now I think that we've actually explored that. And AR, we're going on the 2-hour mark. I don't know about you, but I think I'm pretty much, my energy is low for the rest of the night. I think I'm going to call it.
I understand. Well, you've got a big live tomorrow to get ready for, and I hope everybody jumps over there and supports you in that and shows their love for you while you go engage with some fun.
Robert's here. I just wanted to, Brian, we were saying goodbye, Robert. Wanted to bring you through.
Sorry. What? I had to go run an errand for a friend of mine. That's why I'm so late getting back. Even my wife jumped onto me when I walked in the door. Where'd you go? Why were you gone so long?
Well, Robert, if you want to open up a live stream over on yours, I'll venture over and we could shoot the shit some more so that Kiki can get some sleep.
Okay.
All right. So let me type in Robert's handle so you guys can go check Robert out, because they're going to be switching right over. And hold on, let me get to the banners. So there's AR's handle. So please, for my subscribers who don't know AR, the channel, give his videos a watch and a like, and I think you're going to like his material and you're going to want to subscribe. And then we have, hold on, where Robert is going now, True Crime Cult. And what's the last? Is it 166? Is that right?
162.
Cult 162. All right, and this is where AR and Robert are going to be, so please go hit up their live stream. I'm going to play you guys a little outro. I love both of you, and if you guys can join me tomorrow night on the Drunk Turkey Show, we're going to be live at 8, so I'd love to see all of you there. Please come support me. It's a big audience, so I'd love to feel your energy and your love. It's a big adventure for me.
I'll be over there. I'll be creating havoc. We'll be creating havoc. Don't worry.
I'll be over there right along with him.
All right. Well, God bless you guys, and I hope you have a great evening. We appreciate you guys being here. Thank you.
You too.
You too. Have a great night.